In the last episode, Amaka the muscular princess finally begins her journey to the Agba evil forest to find the cure to her condition with her fiancé Dyke. But on their way, they were attacked by the Ashamaris, King David's private militia, who ambushed them and slaughtered all the royal guards who were with them. In anger, Amaka lost her mind and attacked these rogue warriors in rebellion. As Amaka charged toward the Ashamaris with deadly force, she began beating several of the militia men to a pulp. All of the Ashamaris were in awe of Amaka's brutal vigor in battle. The kind, ever-loving Amaka was gone. All that was left was a muscular giant girl with ungodly strength. So as the battle went on, the Ashamaris fell one after the other. The leader of the Ashamaris, Farouk, saw this and ordered his 10 strongest men who were still standing on the battlefield, beaten and battered by Amaka, to draw back and retreat as the night drew near. So they obeyed, drawing back as the 10 strongest amongst the Ashamaris, including their leader Farouk, ran away, as they were terrified of Amaka's strength. When Amaka saw them running away from the battlefield, she screamed, "You cowards! You came here under false pretenses to kidnap me and hold me for ransom, lying that my father sent you. Then you slaughtered my innocent guards who were only trying to protect me from your lies. But now that you have seen that I'm not just a poor, weak, defenseless princess, you run away? Cowards!" As soon as the leader of the Ashamaris, Farouk, heard this, he turned back and shouted at Amaka, "The only thing we did was slaughter your pathetic guards, and now you've slaughtered men of ours too, so we never lied to you. But if you think that this is over, then you didn't hear well about the Ashamaris." Shortly after the men had retreated, Amaka became dizzy and fainted from the wounds she endured in battle. Dyke immediately caught her before she fell straight to the ground, bashing her head, and then he would carry her to a safe place beside the river that demarcated their kingdom from the Agba evil forest. A few hours would pass before Amaka woke up in Dyke's hands and opened her eyes, which were full of tears because of the wounds she endured in battle. And then all of a sudden she began speaking to Dyke. She asked him what those men said, the Ashamaris. "Be honest with me, do you think it could be true? Does my father really think I committed treason?" Dyke immediately responded, "How can you even consider that thought? Of course not, those so-called Ashamaris are liars. I mean, look at them. Do they even look like people that can be in any way associated with the royal family? Your father couldn't have ever associated with those savage men. More or less sent them to attack you. So don't even for a second buy into their lies," Dyke said to Amaka. Amaka then responded, "But Dyke, I literally killed more than 70% of their army, and yet when I challenged them when they were running away, they still repeated the same thing they said to us when they came. My father had sent them. And these are the Ashamaris we are talking about, not just any random palace guard." Dyke then asked in confusion, "Wait, Amaka, I don't get it. What is so special about these quote-unquote Ashamaris? And why are you talking about them like they are some sort of deity? You just defeated most of their men in combat and cracked their heads. I don't get it. You are not telling me the full story, Amaka." Amaka then held Dyke's face as she responded, "My love, I can't tell you the full story because I am ashamed of my past. I am ashamed of what my being born into this world has cost everyone that I have ever loved. Talk to me, my love. You know you can tell me everything," Dyke said to Amaka. Amaka then began talking in a dwindling tone as she was very weak. "Dyke, my love, the story I am about to tell you was the story my mom told me every night when she was alive, and I am only telling you because I love you and trust you," Amaka said. "All right, my love, I'm all ears, you can trust me," Dyke responded. Then Amaka began talking. "A long time ago, when I was just a few months old, my father took me to your late grandfather Dimpa, the greatest chief priest of our land, because I had a problem. When my mom gave birth to me, I didn't look like other babies. My head was big and my body was stiff and hard as opposed to other babies that had normal-sized heads and soft baby-like bodies. My parents, King David and Queen Zainab, were so worried because of this, but at the time they thought I would grow out of this predicament. Unfortunately, as time passed and I grew older, I only began displaying more strange features. My arms became extremely muscular. My head became bigger and my body was stiffer and heavier than ever before, like that of a man, at just 3 years old. When my father, King David, noticed that my condition wasn't just a minor abnormality, he took me to your late grandfather Dimpa to help beg the gods to rid me of my disease. When he arrived at his shrine, my father asked your grandfather what the cause of my condition was. And your grandfather responded, "It was because you broke your oath, my lord, and married your wife Zainab, the outsider. And now the gods are punishing you, not just by giving you a female child as your firstborn, but also by giving her the features of a man to mock you." My father, King David, then pleaded with Dimpa, "But a great one, can't anything be done to save my poor child? It is not the child's fault. I am the one who broke my oath. I am the one who is supposed to suffer. Please, great Dimpa, help her." Dimpa then responded, My king, I wish there was something I could do to help you. But as I shake these beads and gaze into the eye of this child, all I see is suffering and shame. She would grow up sad and lonely, as no one would want to be associated with her, and even the few who do would eventually betray her. Your daughter's condition would only get worse, and her time in this world would be cut short, for at the age of 14, the age she is supposed to be initiated into the Ashmari cult if she were to be of pure blood, she will die. My father then knelt down and pleaded, "Please, Dimpa, I'm begging you in the name of my crown, have mercy on my daughter. Please, was it a crime to follow my heart and marry who I love? Was it a crime? Please." Dimpa then responded, "I am not the one to have mercy on you. It is not my place, but the place of the gods, so my king. If you really want to save your daughter, you know what you must do to appease your brothers and the gods. Need I say it?" Then King David responded, "No, I can never do that to Zainab. She is my heart. She is my love. I defied the gods and married her because as I grew to love an outsider, yes, I admit it, and I then resented the oath I took when I was just 14 years of age. Please, the two kingdoms can coexist. Help me beg the gods my daughter. Please, Dimpa, I beg of you." Dimpa then responded to the king in a sad tone, "I'm sorry, my king, but you of all people know that when the gods make up their minds on an issue, they don't turn back. You would have to make a choice, King David, your daughter Amaka or your wife Zainab." That was what your grandfather told my father, King David. Amaka said to Dyke, as she interrupted her story. Dyke then responded, Wait, Amaka, now I am very confused. How does this have to do with the fact that you suspect that these warriors are telling the truth? You are just telling me a story of your dad and my grandpa arguing about some oat in our family's shrine. You are not making any sense, my love. This was my mistake. Please just rest instead. I don't need you to explain anything anymore, my love. As Dyke was talking, Amaka then responded with a serious, fading tone. I am telling you this story because my father was once one of those warriors himself. All the kingsmen of royal blood since our kingdom has existed belonged to the Oshimari Brotherhood of Warriors at some point, she said to him. So don't rush me. Allow me to explain myself fully. Dyke then responded in a surprised tone. What do you mean your father was once a member of those savages? And what do you mean you were meant to belong to them? Allow me to finish my story, then you will understand everything, my love. Amaka said to Dyke. Dyke then responded, All right, my love. Then Amaka continued talking. You asked if truly my father King David was once amongst those warriors, and the answer is yes. And the reason why is because of the history of our land. 1,000 years ago, this our great kingdom was nothing more than a section of the great Apama Empire. The Apama Empire? Don't you mean the Apama Kingdom? Dyke curiously asked. No, my love, I know what I said. It was the Apama Empire, the Apama Kingdom you know today. That is, the village that is neighboring ours is just a shadow now of what it once was. Amaka responded. Before now it was an empire, and it was an empire of witches and warriors. Warriors of the Apama Empire spent centuries slowly conquering all the kingdoms that neighbored them and became a great nation. an empire so to say. During this time our kingdom's riches were stolen. Our women married off to pure-blooded Apamas, and our people were greatly discriminated against and heavily taxed once we became slave segments of the nation. It was a time of great sadness and teeth-gnashing for our people. But our people more than ever had faith that one day we would be free of the tyranny of the Apamas, and they were as proud and noble as ever. So they began sorting a way to defeat their oppressors. They searched long and hard and finally, they found a way. You see, the major problem with our people was that they never had a realistic way of defeating the Apamas in combat. Because the Apama people were warriors who possessed unnatural strength fueled by witchcraft, so anyone who took them in combat was instantly defeated. Our people knew this, so they went to acquire power of their own. Every night, all the men of our section would gather around, in front of our village square and cry to the gods begging for strength in battle. Some groups amongst the men who cried got false revelations that they had gotten the strength required to defeat the Apamas. So those ones would go ahead and form private resistance groups that challenged the leadership of the Apama warriors in our land. Those resistances were all slaughtered in mere minutes when they attacked the Apama warriors. Immediately Dyke now interrupted Amaka, asking, "But why? You said our tribesmen prayed to the gods and got a revelation of strength. So why were they defeated by the Apama warriors in combat yet again? And what do you mean the revelation was false? It makes no sense to me." Amaka then responded, "You are right, my love. They weren't supposed to be defeated, but they underestimated the cunningness of the Apamas. Like I said before, the Apama warriors weren't just ordinary warriors. They were a clan of very powerful witches. Now during that time when men of our tribe were crying to the gods at night for power, the king of the Apamas, King Mobu, decided to teach his rebellious subjects a lesson. So he sent a group of his most powerful witch warriors. Known as the Isamaries, these warriors caused confusion in the camp of what he called the most dangerous rebellion to the Apama dynasty, because our tribe's men invoked the sympathy of the gods, which as a witch himself, the king knew could cause serious problems. So his elite army of witches, the Isamaries, went ahead to carry out their king's orders. That night, when some of our tribesmen thought that they got a revelation from the gods, it was actually an illusion induced by a spell that clouded the minds of a few of our tribesmen, deceiving them so that they would be lured into battle and slaughtered. It was brutal, and it was the first time that the warriors of our tribe understood the sophistication of their lords the Apamas, their king Mobu, and their deadly Isamaries witch warriors. Dyke then interrupted Amaka with a loud tone. Wait. Isamari warriors? That sounds just like what you called those guys that attacked us. What did you call them again? Right, the Oshamari warriors. What's up with that? Dyke asked curiously. Amaka then responded, "You are right again, my love, the two names are connected. But please let me finish my story so that you'll understand everything well." Alright, sweetheart, go ahead," Dyke responded. So Amaka continued, "Now after that show of strength by King Mobu, our tribesmen became discouraged and almost lost hope of ever escaping the hands of their oppressors. 'Cause any time they wanted to appeal to the gods for power in order to challenge the Apamas, their Isamaries would always use witchcraft to cause confusion in our camps and tip the scales in their favor. This continued for many years until your family happened, sweetheart," Amaka said to Dyke and then paused. Dyke then looked at her in confusion and asked slowly, "What do you mean my family happened?" "I'm saying there was one man in our tribe who had recently discovered an ability he had to not be susceptible to the witchcraft of the Apamas. The man's name was Odimba, and he was your great-great-great-grandfather." As soon as Dyke heard this, he paused in shock, and then whispered to Amaka, "Odimba, the first seer. My grandfather had those words engraved on his shrine." Amaka then responded, Yes, he was the first chief priest of our land, and he was the reason we gained our freedom. Dyke then asked, "But how? How did this my ancestor, Odimba, help do what others that came before him didn't? And how was he not susceptible to the witchcraft of the Apamos?" "Cool down with the questions, Dyke. I haven't finished my story," Amaka jokingly said. Then she continued, "This your ancestor Odimba, his ability to resist the witchcraft of the Apama was discovered when he was just a teenager. You see, your ancestor Odimba was actually born a sickler just like me, but his condition was far worse, so my mom said. As a child, he could barely walk, talk, or even eat food well. He was a nightmare for his parents, who had to consistently work overtime to provide for their disabled son. But here is the thing, his parents, his father in particular, was one of the commanders of a section of the warriors who at some point were fooled by the illusions of the Isomaries, and were led into battle to be slaughtered. One day Odimba's father and some of the resistance went on a mission to assassinate some top officials in the Apama leadership. Before they got anywhere close to these officials, most of his men were slaughtered, as was the usual routine of Isomaries versus the resistance. All that was left was Odimba's father and two of his inner circle men. And all three of them fled the scene to escape the brutal witch warriors. Two of the men ran into the bushes nearby to escape and were instantly killed. But Odimba's father ran back to his home so that he could see his wife and teenage son one more time. When he rushed into the house, his wife was outside preparing food for the family, and Odimba was in the living room, playing with some random beads. As he entered hurriedly went to the living room, the Isomaries were right at his back, and out of fear for his life, he hugged his son farewell as tears ran through his eyes. But at that exact moment, Odimba's eyes glowed, and the doors of the house were shut. The Isomaries used every spell and every trick they had to try to get into Odimba's house. But as long as his eyes remained glowing, it all proved futile. When the Isomaries noticed what was going on, they fled his house in awe, for they had never seen a more powerful witch doctor than them, and worst of all, from our kingdom. At this part of the story, Dyke stood up and started passing around as he folded his hands. The night had already come, and Amaka had started gaining her strength. Unknown to her that just a few miles away the Ashimaries who ran were also recuperating, planning to strike back at her. So she sat up and asked Dyke with a cheerful demeanor, "My love, why are you passing around like you were holding in urine? Did I say something that upset you?" Dyke then immediately responded, "No, Amaka, I'm just confused. How did my great ancestor gain that type of power to prevent the witches from coming inside his house?" Dyke asked Amaka curiously. Amaka then responded, "Believe it or not, my love, it was because of his sickly condition. You see, because Odimba was a sickler, his parents always served as a bridge between him and the outside world. He never went out to get his own food, and so his parents grew their own food so that he would never lack. Everything he ever needed was provided for him, and he never had any friends or outsiders who he saw. Literally, his whole world was just his parents. And that was the secret to the power our warriors sought." "What do you mean?" Dyke asked curiously. Amaka then responded, "In order to obtain the strength required to defeat our enemies, our tribe had to abstain from anything and everything associated with the Apamos. Their culture, their food, their women, even down to the water on their mainland. There had to be absolute concentration for any man who sought the strength of our gods to defeat their enemies. This was what our warriors lacked. And your great ancestor was the key to discovering it, because he unknowingly was consecrated to the gods by his parents by abstaining from all outside things. After that day, he defeated the Isomary warriors that came to attack his dad, by preventing them from coming into the house. Men of our tribe would take it upon themselves to train him in the ways of the gods, so that when he came to maturity in wisdom and his newly discovered power, he could help them obtain such too. And so it happened. When Odimba came of age, he was anointed the first chief priest of our tribe, and then he alone pleaded with the gods for 30 days for the power to defeat our enemies. It was then that the secret of concentration was revealed to him. And so he informed the warriors of our tribe what they had to do if they desired such power. And that was when the plunging began. Our warriors began what is famously known in our history as Ashi, which was the cleansing and concentration of our men. Those who ate foreign food that belonged to the Apamas or other neighboring kingdoms stopped eating that food. Those who participated in the cultural activities of other tribes stopped doing that entirely, and those who married foreign wives of Apama or foreign descent chased those wives away. By doing these harsh concentration rituals, they were able to attain the strength of the gods. They became Maries, as your great ancestor called them. Dyke then interrupted Amaka. Maries, isn't that the last part of the name of those warriors that attacked us? Dyke asked. Yes, Dyke. Maries means warriors in our ancient native language, and Ashi means consecrated. So in other words, the Ashimaries directly translates to consecrated warriors. When Dyke heard this, he placed his hands on his head in utter realization and then asked, Amaka, so if to become an Ashimary you need to take the oath of external consecration. How exactly did your father break this oath? And how are you involved in the whole thing? Amaka then responded, I'm getting there, my love. I told you this whole story to explain to you how sacred this group of warriors that just attacked us are and how fundamental they are to our culture and our history. I told you this whole story so that you would know that with the strength gotten from the gods after taking the oath, we rebelled against the Apamas and claimed back our land. Not only that, but with the momentum from our victory, other kingdoms equally gained their own freedom during that period, weakening the Apama Empire into a mere speck of land, the one we see today. And after the war that gave us freedom, these brave warriors, the Ashimaries, decided to set up a new revolutionary government, crowning their leader Akan, my great ancestor, as the king of the entire tribe. And so began my family dynasty. Dyke then interrupted Amaka and asked loudly in a harsh tone, Amaka, please, I'm tired of this history lesson. All I asked you was why you could ever think your father sent these men against you. And you haven't answered that. Now I ask you, what oath exactly did your father break? And now you are telling me that our tribesmen eventually won the war, like I didn't see that coming. Please, this was a mistake. I think we should begin setting up camp since night has already come. You need your rest after that battle, and so do I. We have a long journey ahead to the Agba Evil Forest. And now, without our royal guards, we would need all the strength we can get to brave this journey by ourselves. Amaka then shouted at Dyke, Would you just shut up and listen? You think this is easy for me? Do you think I just wanted to give you an exhausting history of our kingdom, that for all that I know, you probably already knew? I told you all this so that you would understand when I say. Dyke then responded immediately. When you say what? What is going on, Amaka? What aren't you telling me? Amaka responded almost immediately with a shaky voice and tears in her eyes. Dyke, after my ancestor Akan became king, from him thereafter every firstborn child of the king in our land was always a male. And to become king, the male child must first take a wife from our tribe to show maturity. This had been the status quo for over 1,000 years. But in my case it was different. Dyke then asked Amaka in a calm voice, What exactly are you saying? Why was your case different, Amaka? What aren't you telling me? Please, my love, talk to me. Amaka then responded hurriedly. What I'm saying is that I was the firstborn child of my parents. And I was a girl, so the gods cursed me with a muscular, man-like body. I'm saying that my father broke the oath of the Ashimaries and took an outsider as a wife, and I'm saying that my mother was of Apama descent. Immediately, she said this Dyke's eyes froze in confusion and shock. Minutes passed and he wasn't able to utter a word. So he and Amaka remained in silence as they looked at each other awkwardly as time passed. But as Dyke was finally going to comment on what Amaka had just revealed, both of them began hearing the sound of marching horses coming towards them in the middle of the night. Amaka stood up, but before she could get on her feet, both she and Dyke were instantly surrounded by the Ashimari warriors that remained and their leader Farouk. Immediately Amaka saw them, she shouted, "Cowards! What manner of ambush is this?" Farouk, the Ashimari leader, then responded, "We are not cowards, princess. Just warriors, and a good warrior knows when to retreat and when to strike, and the time to strike is now. So I tell you this, stand down and come with us as our captive or risk taking all 10 of us in combat." Immediately after Farouk said this, Amaka gilded her stance and rushed Farouk and the 3 warriors standing close to him in combat. She pounced on them, landing heavy blows and jabs. Meanwhile, the remaining 7 warriors ambushed Dyke. Dyke was able to stun 2 of them by shooting them with his gun, but eventually, they got the better of him and struck him down, piercing his sides with their swords and shooting his left leg. Dyke was completely paralyzed. And at the same moment, Amaka had gotten the better of Farouk and his 3 warriors. The 3 warriors that were with him were defeated and on the ground, while Amaka was directly on top of Farouk's body. As she pressed his neck, "Why are you doing this? What is your goal? Did my father really send you?" she yelled as she pressed his neck. Farouk then responded in a faint tone, as he was loosing his breath. "I already told you, this is your father's wish. You of all people should know that the Ashimaris are no liars. So if you really respect your dad, King David, you will turn yourself in." As soon as Farouk finished talking, Amaka immediately pushed herself away from his body in realization. But before she could have a chance to think, she heard Dyke's voice as he groaned in pain at her back. So she turned and saw him being manhandled by the 7 warriors that ambushed him. So Amaka shouted, "Release him now, you better release him now, or else." "Or else what?" The warrior that was holding Dyke's body responded, "I know you think you are some sort of monster who can take all of us one. But I bet your little boyfriend isn't as strong. You see, as we are talking now, the man is losing a ton of blood. And I bet that in his state now, one punch from me would permanently put him in the ground. So if you want your little boyfriend to see tomorrow's sunlight, you should surrender now and let us take you as our prisoner back to your father, or else." Amaka then responded immediately, "And what makes you think I would follow you?" She then immediately resumed pressing the neck of Farouk, as she spoke to them in an authoritative tone. "Look, take a good look at your so-called leader. I defeated him and 3 of your brothers in mere seconds. That just goes to show you the height of my power. Now I would make a one-time offer to you. I'll let Farouk go and then you hand me Dyke and the Ashimaris would live to fight another day. Or you take what is behind door number 2, you lay another finger on Dyke, and I kill all of you and end the brotherhood here and now. So what is it gonna be?" Amaka asked fiercely. The warrior holding Dyke's nearly unconscious body began laughing and then responded in a condescending voice. "You think you can defeat all 7 of us because you are some sort of hybrid? Think again. Our leaders are replaceable, but I bet your precious boyfriend Dyke isn't. How long did it take you to find a man who would love your ugly, disgusting muscular body? Years, I would presume. Yeah. The look on your face says it all. There is no way you are letting him die over some gamble. So why don't you go ahead and do what you have to do to our leader, and we would go ahead and do what we have to your little boyfriend." As Amaka heard the words from the warrior's mouth, she was gripped with fear for Dyke's safety, so she surrendered. "All right, you win, please let Dyke go and I'll release your leader too." and come with you as your prisoner." When Dyke heard this, in a faint voice he screamed, "No, Amaka, don't do this. Whatever beating they want to give me, I can take it. For all we know, these guys are hired assassins who would do and say anything to get the job done. Please, Amaka, don't follow them." Amaka then responded in a sad voice, "I have to, my love. I can't risk your safety. I have to go with the—" So Amaka stopped leaning on Farouk's body and then stepped aside and knelt down, surrendering herself to the warriors. The warriors then flung Dyke away and immediately rushed Amaka, bounding her in heavy chains as they subdued her. They now placed her on a horse and then carried Farouk's faint body and also placed in on a horse and rode off into the moonlight, leaving Dyke alone on the road at night, beaten and barked. As Amaka was being carried away by the Ashamaris, she glanced back at Dyke's body and in sadness turned away, as she wasn't sure she was ever going to see him again. Now, as the warriors were carrying her away on horseback to her father, all she could think of was why her father had waited so long to finally give in to the wishes of his brotherhood. She felt so scared and in shame, confused at everything that had just happened. But in due time she accepted her faith and opted to first look her father in the eye when she was brought back and confirm if all the Ashamaris were saying was true. Little did she know that it was her sister Precious who orchestrated the whole thing and was pulling all the strings. Meanwhile, back at the river demarcating their village, and the Agba evil forest, Dyke laid on the ground helpless as he kept flashing in and out of consciousness. All he could think, smell, and feel was rage, confusion, and heartbreak. Amaka had just dropped a huge ball on him about her family's origins and the origin of their kingdom. And now the same warriors from her story, the ones her father was allegedly part of, had just kidnapped Amaka and almost killed him. Dyke was in utter depression. He didn't know what was going on anymore. So he refused to stand up from the ground and instead stayed there beside the river, sobbing and mourning Amaka all through the night. But eventually morning would come, and Dyke would wake up in agonizing pain from all the injuries he obtained in battle the previous day. He would start making loud cries as he couldn't get his body up, cause the injuries had started fusing and realizing puss. His crying went on for several minutes until he heard a loud shout coming from someone at the other side of the river. The person shouted, "Who is that? Who is making that loud noise this early morning? You are really scaring me, please. Are you in the right state of mind? I hope you are not mentally ill," the person said. Dyke then responded immediately, "Please help me. I'm not mentally ill. I am just severely injured. Please, no one I know is around to help me because no one usually comes anywhere near this river." Then the person replied, "Okay, but where are you in the first place? I can't even see you. All I can hear is your voice." Dyke then noticed that the person's voice sounded very feminine, like that of a young maiden, so he asked, "Wait, are you a lady strange?" The person then replied, "Yes, I am. What does that matter?" She asked, "Nothing." Dyke immediately replied, "I was just curious since your voice sounded very feminine. You asked where I was. Well, wherever you are, just take your right and follow the sound of my voice. Then when you reach the biggest tree you can find, stop and check the back." Dyke yelled, "Okay," the lady responded, and followed Dyke's instructions precisely. And when she reached the tree, she saw Dyke, beaten and bruised beyond what she had imagined. Immediately Dyke saw her. He noticed how beautiful she was, but because he was still a bit noxious from all the blows he took to his head, he mistook the lady for Amaka, and then exclaimed, "My love, Amaka, you came back to me?" Then the lady replied, "No. Oh, I'm not Amaka. My name is Elizabeth." As Dyke heard what she said, he began drifting into unconsciousness as the words Elizabeth, Elizabeth, Elizabeth echoed in his mind as he went unconscious. As this was happening far back at the royal palace, that very morning Amaka was brought in chains. The Ashimaris dragged her through the palace courts like a cow waiting to be slaughtered, and then took her to the royal chambers inside the place, where she stood up to face her father, King David, in chains. Then Amaka raised her head and started talking. "Father, what is going on? The Ashimaris ambushed me and Dyke and slaughtered dozens of your palace guards, and they did it in your name, saying that you were the one who sanctioned it. Father, please tell me this means that they are liars, and punish them for this great crime." "Shut up!" King David yelled, "Not another word, you treacherous beast." Amaka then responded, "Father, how can you speak to me like that? What's going on? Please don't tell me this was all true. Please, is it because I didn't say goodbye to you before I left? Why the sudden change in your character?" Amaka said in a sobbing voice. King David then replied to Amaka fiercely, "Would you keep quiet, child? After everything I did for you, you still choose to betray me, after I was ousted from my clan, after what happened to your mother, and most especially, after I spent the better time of 2 decades waiting on you to get married, because no man would dare touch your beastly body with a 10-foot pool." Amaka then responded, "Daddy, why are you talking like this? Please, it's me, Amaka. Have you forgotten yourself?" King David then responded, "No, child, I haven't. I just remembered what your being born has put me through, and now you dare try to bite the hand that fed you. Daddy, what are you going on about? I never tried to betray you. Where did you hear that from?" Amaka said with a pleading demeanor. King David then shouted, "Liar! Would you say that you and that bastard hunter didn't connive to go to the Agba evil forest and wish death on me so that you could steal my throne? What? How? Who told you those lies?" Amaka asked desperately. King David then responded, "If what you mean is who exactly alerted me of your dubious plans, then I have your junior sister Precious to thank. Because you see, unlike you, she has shown me true loyalty." As King David was still talking, Precious walked into the room majestically as she had an evil smile on her face. She then followed up on what King David was saying. "Yes, Father, of a truth I have been the only one who has been loyal to you, not my beast of a sister." Amaka, seeing what was happening, then yelled, "Precious, this was your doing. Why? Father, please, you have to believe me. Precious did something to frame. It's all a lie, you have to snap out of it." Precious then screamed, "Enough, Father, enough with her lies. Send her to the dungeon already. Not 1 minute more for this traitor." King David then responded in a fierce voice, "Very well, my Ashimaris, please take my treacherous daughter to the royal dungeon. Lock her up and throw away the keys. I don't want to see her ugly face ever again." As soon as he said this, Amaka began crying, "Daddy, please, please, don't do this to me. It's Precious. It's always been Precious," she exclaimed as the Ashimaris took her to the royal dungeon and locked her in one of the cells. When she got there, she began crying profusely about her entire predicament and wondered how her life took a complete 180 in just a couple of hours. At that very moment in the cell, she remembered that she abandoned Dyke on the road close to the Agba evil forest and prayed that he made it out alive, even with his injuries notwithstanding. Unknown to her that her former friend Elizabeth came to his rescue. You see, early in the morning after Dyke fainted from exhaustion, Elizabeth took him to her house to treat him of his wounds. When she got home, her parents saw her supporting the body of a young man as she helped carry him to the front of her house. Elizabeth's parents, who were just about to leave for her poultry farm, inquired, "Elizabeth, what are you doing, and who is this you brought to our house?" Elizabeth's father asked her, and she responded, "Father, I found this man lying dead just a few miles away from our house, and I couldn't help but bring him back to see if there was any way I could help him so that he wouldn't die." Elizabeth's father then asked, "So let me get this straight, you found this random man on the road, beaten and battered from God knows what, and then all of a sudden you want to bring him home and become his personal nurse?" "Yes, Daddy, that's what I'm saying," Elizabeth responded. Her father then immediately replied to her, "Are you out of your mind, Elizabeth? How can you even do something like this?" Elizabeth then responded, "Father, please, ever since I came back that night, I felt extremely guilty. I haven't found a way to begin forgiving myself. So please, maybe this is a chance for me to make amends. Maybe by helping this man, I can obtain forgiveness from the gods." Elizabeth's father then replied to her in a condescending voice, "Oh please Elizabeth, this again. We told you that this story about killing palace guards is just a figment of your imagination. That night all that happened is that you fainted and Princess Precious brought you back, as the good friend she is. So stop going on about how she forced you to commit abominable acts." Elizabeth then quickly responded, "And Father, if you believe anything that evil princess told you, then you are a bigger fool than Princess Precious makes you for father." Her mother then replied to her, "That's enough, Elizabeth. You are out of line. How dare you talk to your father like that, and how dare you talk about your princess like that too? Look, the royal family gave us everything we have today, the food we eat, and the clothes we wear. If not for them, especially Princess Precious, we would still be begging on the streets. And you want to throw all of that away because of some crazy dream you had while you fainted and a dying stranger you found from God knows where? I knew you weren't that smart, but I didn't think you could be this naive." Elizabeth then immediately responded, "I'm not naive, Mother. I know what happened to me, it was no dream. And the fact you guys aren't even willing to consider my story because our family owes Elizabeth for our current financial strength just tells me you guys sold your soul a long time ago to that girl." Her mother then responded in shock, "Like I said, Elizabeth, enough is enough. As you can see, me and your father are going to the farm. You can do whatever you want with this battered man. But by the time we get home in the evening, we don't want to see him anywhere near our house." Elizabeth's mother said as she and Elizabeth's father left for their poultry farm. Elizabeth would then carry Dyke into her home and begin attending to his wounds. During this time, Dyke would be asleep. But towards evening, he woke up in a burst of emotions as he could smell something cooking. As he woke up, he exclaimed, "Where am I?" Dyke would ask as he woke up all by himself in the parlor of a house he did not know, covered in medicinal patches and herbal treatments. He forced himself to get up and then exclaims again, "Hello, hello, is anyone home? Please, how did I get here?" Immediately Elizabeth heard his voice. She rushed out of the kitchen. "Dyke, thank God you are finally awake. How are you feeling now?" she desperately asked. Dyke then immediately responded, "I'm fine, and who are you exactly?" "It's me, Elizabeth, the girl you met beside the Agba River. Don't tell me you've forgotten." Dyke then replied to her, "Elizabeth, you say I can't remember much from yesterday. But yeah, I think I remember saying your name a few times. How do I know you again?" Elizabeth then replied to him, "You don't, we actually met for the first time a few hours ago, when I found you all beaten and bruised." Dyke then gave a faint sigh and responded, "Oh, I see, that checks out, I guess, given that injuries are still all over my body. By the way, I've been meaning to ask you since we never got around to it when we met. How exactly did you get these injuries on your body?" Elizabeth earnestly asked. Dyke now responded in a chivalrous tone, "Don't worry about how I got them. Just know that I'm grateful you took me in and attended to my wounds. You are avoiding my question. I think I deserve to know what happened since literally just saved your life. Elizabeth insisted. Dyke now caved and started talking. Okay, you win. I was traveling to the Agba evil forest with the love of my life, Princess Amaka, when a group of giant hefty men on horses attacked us. They ambushed us and slaughtered all of Princess Amaka's royal guards. Wait, Princess Amaka? Wait, did you just call her the love of your life? Elizabeth suddenly interrupted Dyke. Dyke then responded, yes, I did. And she is indeed the love of my life. Any problems? He asked. No, there isn't. And what did you say your name was again? Elizabeth asked. I never got to tell you, it's Dyke, he replied. Elizabeth then asked again. You wouldn't happen to be a hunter, would you? Dyke then responded, well, as a matter of fact, I am a hunter. How did you know, Elizabeth? Just a hunch, Elizabeth quickly replied. Don't worry, you can continue your story, she said jokingly. But deep in her mind, she realized that all the pieces were coming together. Dyke was the suitor who was going to marry Amaka, which was what made Precious seek her help to meet her aunties. But she wasn't sure this attack on them was orchestrated by Precious, so she kept listening to Dyke. Dyke then continued his story. Luckily, Princess Amaka was able to unleash her deadly strength on the warriors, defeating the majority of them and sending the rest running. But not before the warriors told us that it was the king himself who sent them after her. Elizabeth then interrupted. Wait, are you telling me that King David sent bounty hunters after his own daughter? That's a serious allegation. Dyke, it's treason at best and inconceivable at worst. Dyke then replied, I know, I didn't believe it myself. But then Amaka started believing what they said and then started telling me a long story of our kingdom's history. And now I don't know. Elizabeth then asked again. Dyke, are you sure that the bounty hunters that came after you and Princess Amaka said for a fact that they were acting in accordance with the king's orders? Yes, Elizabeth, that is exactly what I'm saying. As Elizabeth heard this, her mind quickly went back to the time she and Precious spent at her Aunt Agatha's shrine, and the ritual she recommended to Precious to take over the king's mind. But she wasn't sure, so she sat there pondering in thought about what Precious had been doing since they returned and if everything is connected. But the injuries, if Amaka defeated the bounty hunters, how come the injuries on her lover Dyke? Why was he alone by the river helpless? And whatever happened to Amaka? Elizabeth thought to herself, so she asked Dyke openly. Dyke, something doesn't add up. How did you get your injuries, and why were you all alone, almost dying, when I found you since you said Amaka defeated the bounty hunters? Dyke then replied, well, that was because later that day in the night when me and Amaka were reminiscing on what had just happened to us near the river, all of a sudden the bounty hunters that escaped previously returned for a second time to ambush us. Elizabeth then interrupted. But surely Amaka must have still dealt with them, even given that they were less in number than before, right? Dyke then responded. You are right, she should have, and she was in the process of doing that. Not until some of the men ambushed me and held me hostage, torturing me and threatening Amaka that they would put me down if she didn't surrender. Dyke then began sobbing stoically. My love Amaka felt like she had no choice and then surrendered to them in exchange for my life. And that was the last time I saw her. It's all my fault, Dyke said in a sad tone. Elizabeth then responded to Dyke with a shameful demeanor. No, Dyke. It's my fault. What do you mean? Dyke curiously asked. You might not know this, but I and Amaka were once best of friends. And I think I betrayed her, Elizabeth said. Immediately, there was a deafening silence that lasted for minutes. Elizabeth looked at Dyke's face in shame as he was processing what she said, and a giant frown filled his face. After some minutes passed, Dyke turned to Elizabeth and asked slowly, What do you mean you betrayed her? Are you telling me that you are the one that sent those men after us? Dyke screamed in anger. Elizabeth immediately responded, "No, that's not what exactly happened, but I might have had a hand in it. You see, a few days ago, Precious Amaka's sister came to me to help her take down her sister because she was about to get married to you and inherit the throne. Something that Precious always wanted." Dyke then interrupted. Wait, Precious Amaka's sister. No wonder she didn't give me the time of day when I visited the royal palace. So she has always been jealous of her sister.
No wonder,
he said. Elizabeth then replied to him, "Yes, you are spot on. It's a long story, but I ended up helping her contact a powerful witch, and I think that has something to do with why the king sent those bounty hunters against her." "So you believe that King David actually sent those men against her too?" Dyke asked intensely. "Yes, I do," Elizabeth responded. "The reason I think so is because Precious had the witch grant her the power to sway the king's mind in any way she sees fit. And I think this attack on Amaka was her first testing of the power." Dyke then asked, "Why are you telling me this? I mean, Precious came to you because you share a fellow hatred for Amaka as her, so why?" Elizabeth then responded in a sad voice, "Because even if Precious was the one who wanted to bring down Amaka, I was the one who gave her the idea of manipulating the king's mind as a means. And because I even agreed to help her take her to the witch in the first place, 3 innocent guards lost their lives to pave our way. And I haven't gotten a minute of sleep since that day." Dyke then responded to Elizabeth, "This is all good and fine, and I appreciate you coming clean to me, but all this doesn't change the fact that Amaka is still being held captive by the king in God knows where, and we don't have a way to save her." "You are right, it doesn't. But I think I know what can be done to save Amaka," Elizabeth replied Dyke and then asked, "Have you heard about the Agba Evil Forest?" She then asked. Dyke then replied, "Yes, of course, that's exactly where I and Princess Amaka were headed to find a cure for her big muscular stature. There is a shrine there that has the power to grant any wish." "Wait, that genius, so you plan that we go there and make a wish to break the king's enchantment by Precious?" Elizabeth then responded, "Yes, exactly. But we have to act fast before the king unknowingly does something to Amaka that he will regret." "Okay," Dyke said as he got up and began warming up his body to leave. As the night had come, and then all of a sudden Elizabeth's parents returned and her father then shouted at her, "Elizabeth, so you haven't gotten rid of this man? You kept him here till the evening, going against our instructions." "Dad, I couldn't send him away before he finished recovering. Please, if only you cared about other people the way you cared about the royal family and Princess Precious, Dad." Elizabeth replied to her father, "How dare you speak to me in that manner, Elizabeth? Have you gone mad? Have you gone colomental?" Dyke then interrupted her father, "Please, sir, forgive her. I'm sorry I stayed this long. I'll be on my way now." Dyke then walked out of their presence, about to head back to his house. Elizabeth then stopped him. "Dyke, wait," she said. "Let me join you so that we can both plan how we can stop this madness on the way." So she then left with him. Her parents tried to call her back, but she refused to heed their call. So they left. The following day, Elizabeth's parents became worried about her whereabouts. So they headed to the royal palace to ask Precious about her whereabouts. When they arrived at the palace gates, they were escorted into the palace, and Precious was alerted of their presence. So she went to see them. "What are you doing here, noble parents of my friend Elizabeth?" Elizabeth's father then replied, "It's about your friend Princess." "What about her?" Precious asked. "She ran away with a wounded man yesterday night, and since then we haven't seen her." "A wounded man, you say? Can you give a more detailed description of this man?" Precious suspiciously asked. "Yes, my princess. It was a young handsome man who was adorned in hunter attire, and he had injuries all around his body like he just came back from a battle. Elizabeth's father replied. Precious then paused in shock as her suspicions were almost validated. She then asked one final question. And where exactly did Elizabeth find this wounded man? By the river demarcating our kingdom from the Agba evil forest, my liege. Elizabeth's father replied her. As soon as Precious heard this, she immediately verified that the man in question was Dyke and Elizabeth was with him. This could be a threat to her newfound power, she thought, so she dismissed Elizabeth's parents, promising that she would find their daughter. Later that night, she sent servants to call Farouk, the leader of the Ashamaris, to meet with him. When he arrived, they both strolled outside the palace and stopped by a nearby tree. This was when Farouk immediately rushed and swept Precious off her feet, kissing her passionately. Farouk then began talking. Precious, my love, I'm so glad you called me this night so that we spend some quality time alone. So what do you have planned? Precious then pushed Farouk away from her body, shouting, You said you love me, yet you didn't do what I asked. Precious said. Farouk then replied, What are you talking about, my love? I have done everything you have asked of me so far. Precious then responded, Then why did you not kill the bastard hunter that was with my sister when you ambushed them? Ah, my love. Keeping him alive was the only way we saw to force Amaka, your sister, to stand down and surrender herself to us as our captive. But now Amaka is imprisoned. We can go after that hunter and ensure your future as our next king with me by your side as your husband. Farouk said, Very well, tomorrow is the day you will put your sword where your mouth is, but I will follow you so that you won't mess it up again. Ready your Ashamaris, for tomorrow we hunt the hunter. Thank you for watching this story. I am grateful for all who waited for part 3. Takes a lot of time to make these videos, but we are almost at the end of this beautiful story. The Big Muscular Princess is a 5-part story. You have seen the first 3 parts, remaining the last 2, and it will come to an end. If you would like me to make a part 4 and continue this saga, comment part 3 in the comments and share this video with your friends and family. Also, like and subscribe to the channel so that you'll be the first to be notified when I drop a new video. Here are the first 2 parts in case you haven't seen them or want to rewatch them. Thanks again for watching and have a lovely day.